we went ahead and added the max width to be 1400 pixels. So when you're inside of TextMate, we've gone ahead and added the max width of 1400 pixels. Now, the next piece we want to do is we want to center this layout. Now, you can click on this link here that goes to centering a layout, and it basically has the same thing that is in your exercise resources directly under the thumbnail grid called How to Center a Layout. And the main thing is that since we're going to basically tell the CSS that we're going to use the Flexbox model, which we're going to use throughout here, and that we want the content to be centered. So we're just going to go ahead and add these two rules here. Display flex, justify content, center. We're going to go ahead and add those to our CSS. And that's going to go in our body. So we're going to tell our body, hey, we're going to use the Flexbox and we want things to be centered. I'm just going to save that. We've already gone ahead and set the max width to 1400 pixels. So you can kind of ignore this percentage one down here. And again, you can click on the examples either here or in to you for how to do that, and you can take a look at the code. But once I have gone ahead and added in that we are going to be using the Flexbox and that I want things to be centered and that I want my container to be at most 1400 pixels, now when we update our index.html, it should be centered. Great. I'm also going to go ahead and change the title of my page from thumbnail grid start to just the thumbnail grid. And this is still my demo. Awesome. So we've gone ahead, we've centered it, we've got our container. Now we want to go ahead and set the margin on the body to be 1em on the top and 3% on the left and right. So we're going to go back to our body and our styles, and we want to add in a margin. And what did I say? 1em and 3%? 1em and 3%. Great. Okay. Save, and again. Boop. We've got a little thing there. And right now you're not seeing too much about the left and right because everything's centered. We haven't made our grid yet. So right now we want to take our 8 thumbnails and we want to make them a grid. And we're going to want 4 in a row and then 2 rows. So we've already set our Flexbox model. So we've already said, hey, we're using Flexbox by going ahead and setting in our body that we're using the Flexbox. But we want to make these into rows. And so we can do rows and columns. And if you want to learn more about Flexbox, you can go ahead and click on CSS Tricks, and there's a really great explanation about how to use Flexbox. You can see, and lots of tricks, as well as where there's some bugs and if there's issues with browser support in older browsers. But right about now, we know, okay, we've got each of these things. They're all list elements, and the container should be our unordered list. So we want a new selector that's going to target the unordered list, and we want that selector to target unordered list that's a descendant of the thumbnail grid class. So we want to make sure that the only things that are selected are the unordered lists that are part of our thumbnail grid. Because if you've got things like navigation on your site, if you've got other things, so in this case, we don't happen to have a nav that uses an unordered list, but a lot of cases we will. So we want to make sure that we're only targeting this unordered list, that we don't want to start bringing in things like our nav or anything that would be in our footer. So that's why we want to make sure that it's a UL that is a descendant of thumbnail grid. So let's go ahead and we're going to want to add this to that selector. So we want a new selector. All right, so class thumbnail grid UL. So now we are saying any ULs that are descended from thumbnail grid. And I'm going to double check my spelling because you know me. Sometimes I write GERD instead of grid, and that's sad. All right. Now we're saying, okay, we want that to be the Flexbox. Great. So we've got flex items that are each of these list elements. that are inside a flex container. So we've got a big flex container that is our body, and then we have the flex container of our unordered list. So we've got kind of two flex boxes inside of each other. They're nested. So we're now going to be able to do rows and columns, and we're going to be able to order things left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top. And basically the reason that we have, I'm trying to think of a better word than flexibility, is because we don't all read the same way. So we want to make sure that in our case, we're laying things out left to right, top to bottom, because that's how, as Americans, we read. Other languages will read from left to right, top to bottom. Some of them read top to bottom first, and then left to right or right to left. So we want to make sure that as these things are in a particular order in our HTML, 1, 2, 3, you'll notice that we go clock, bowl, Helvetica, not clock, bowl, Helvetica. So that's where it's important, kind of which order we're doing that in. So we want to add these properties basically to that container. So that container being our UL that is a descendant of the thumbnail grid. So we want the flex direction to be a column. And we want the wrap to be reversed. So now what happens? All right. Now we want that. All right. Now what happens? Whee! Now you can see some of the images. These are the ones that I didn't style with the padding. So see what happens. These ones are styled correctly, but the images are too big, right? So we're going to need to go in and do a little bit of finessing in order to make everything fit 4 across rather than 2 across or 3 across if you don't have any padding in there. So I'm going to pause now. I'm going to update the other 4 images so that they're all in there right. And then we're going to jump in to part 4 here where we're going to resize all of our pieces.